and you're very welcome to Kicking Match. My name is Peter Cinnamon, and this is a podcast all about the Irish League. A league where, if it was wacky races, Glentoran feels like they would be Dick Dastardly. As every one of their competitors begin to weaken and knock each other out, up comes Mick McDermott in his Wilson and Plombard meme machine right down the middle of the track with the top of the table in his sights. But something tells us, no matter how good things are, surely something is about to go wrong here. And does this make Tim McCann the Muttley in this metaphor? Regardless, like a student with a month-load of washing, Linfield are finally coming home this weekend, where those undefeated and pesky goal-stingy Glens will be coming to Windsor. Will the Blues finally get on track? Is Carrick's early season bump already over? Could the mild-mannered janitor actually be Hong Kong Phooey? And how many candles did the IFA's granting light to get that dream Euro 2024 qualifying draw? Answers to at least some of those questions on the way. The past weekend might not have provided the most sterling selection of games, but here we're going to make up for it with some solid gold chat. And to raise this podcast to heights only the current interest rates have seen, I've got a journalist and commentator, a man who must write more about football in a week than I do pretty much about anything. That is, of course, until my Ronan Keating musical gets off the ground. When the goal gets tough, this man gets going. It's the chief sports writer for the Belfast Telegraph. You're very welcome to the pod, Stephen Beacom.
Hi Peter, how you keeping?
I'm doing alright. For once, Stephen, I'm actually chatting to someone that I have met in real life and not for the first time on Zoom. We have crossed paths once before. We met in the sports box of Warrenpoint Town for that big Sky Sports game. I was there covering it for the radio. You were there covering clearly for the Beltel, and it was very nice to meet you. But one thing I remember from that is that I'm still very much early into this whole reporting, talking on radio thing. And it was one of the few times I've been in like a press box where it was quite chatty. It's like we were talking through the beats of the game as everything was going on, and you had so many brilliant lines. And I just remember thinking, oh, I'm gonna have to steal one of these right here, and he's gonna know exactly that's a brilliant line that I stole. So I apologize if you're thinking this wee person in the corner is stealing all my good bits, but it was just too good not to nick.
Peter, take them, mate, because I've got to tell you, I enjoyed that day at Warrenpoint. I used to cover Warrenpoint home games quite a lot, and without question, it's the best press box in the Irish League for crack. Obviously, I've been to every press box in the Irish League and beyond, and nothing beats Milltown for the fun. So, and it was great to meet you that day, and it's a real pleasure to be on your podcast. I know you've been meaning to get me on for some time. I'm really delighted we can do this tonight.
Well, it means we've got so much more of the league to get stuck into, as even myself in this position, go from the start of the league and every team's great and wonderful and it could go one way or the other. And look, it's still early days, but we're getting into the season. We're starting to see a pack emerge forward as we almost complete our first round robin of the teams. For yourself, I don't think, at least for me, nothing's really surprised me in regards to where the teams are. If you were to pick any surprise package, it's maybe Carrick so far, but the way recent results are going, perhaps they're falling down to earth.
Yeah, Carrick have had a brilliant start to the season. They beat Linfield, which was a phenomenal result for them. They beat Crusaders as well, another outstanding result. But you're right, they're going through a sticky spell now, and Stuart King will want them to get out of that as quickly as possible. What's been interesting to me is already we know who the top six and who the bottom six are going to be. I guess we kind of knew that even before a ball was kicked. But you've got Larne, Glentoran, Cliftonville, Crusaders, Coleraine and Linfield in that order at the moment. It won't finish in that order, but they will be the top six. And Carrick, Glenavon, Ballymena, Newry, Dungannon and Portadown, they'll make up the bottom six. And it could well finish in that order. There is that predictability about the Irish League in terms of who's going to finish in the top six and the bottom six. In terms of the title, it is unpredictable at this moment in time. Linfield have been a shadow of themselves since the European heartbreak, and they're going to have to click in gear because they don't want to fall too far behind. And I know we'll talk about the big match coming up on Friday between Glentoran and Linfield. Already, I think that's a crucial game of football.
It really is. you're totally nailed it there, that it's starting to see exactly as you said. The top six seem nailed on already, and the bottom six as well. And so far, there's been very few results. I'm even trying to think, bar that Carrick one, how many times a quote-unquote bottom six team has been able to beat a top six team. And look, there's a lot of news, and there's a lot of Northern Ireland news as well that I really want to get into. You're one of the most connected men when it comes to that. But for this week, I want to jump straight into the action, and it was not a classic, to say the least. Coleraine 0, Linfield 0, a tepid game in front of a bumper 3,800 person crowd. These teams always seem to draw, and it was no different this time around. For me, it feels as though that's a game where no team was able to show that killer touch. But it's another game where Glentoran are celebrating afterwards as, again, early days, that's more points dropped when you see Glentoran running away, barely conceding a goal. What's going on with Linfield right now? For you, is it formation? Is it personnel? Or is it just not been able to get this motor running?
Well, the European match was absolutely huge for them. You have to bear in mind that that match against our FS, the Latvian team, was their biggest match of the season. They won't play a bigger match all season. I don't care if they're playing Glentoran in an Irish Cup final. It won't be bigger than that European match because they were on the verge of history. They were literally seconds away from history. And then in the blink of an eye, Peter, all the money went, and they were looking at millions of pounds. All the glory went. The players would have been loving to have played on that stage. And all of the glory just evaporated but before their very eyes. And I'm not convinced that Linfield have got over that. I think they need a massive match to get the juices flowing again, and that match might come on Friday night. But in the games that they've played so far, whenever they have played a decent team, they've struggled. They've beaten the worst four teams in the league, in my opinion, so far this season, beating them reasonably comfortably. But that's flat track bullies, if to use cricket terms. You know, once they've been getting a bouncer from a few other teams, they've been really struggling. So, yeah, I think there are issues at Linfield that need addressed. David Healy is the best manager in the league. He's proved that time and time again. He's won 5 titles in 6. I'm certain that he will pull things around. But I think the players have got to get their finger out. And maybe tonight's penalty shootout victory over Cliftonville in the County Antrim Shield will be the boost that they need. They're now at the semi-finals of the Shield. I know it's not their priority, but to get a result against a big club like Cliftonville and a very dangerous opponent, I think that's got to increase self-belief ahead of the match against the Glens. Put it like this, Peter, I don't think there's any panic at Windsor Park, but there would be serious concerns if they were to fall 9 points behind their nearest and dearest rivals from the east on Friday night.
They've had a tricky deck. They've had a tough draw to get things going because they've only played one home game so far this season in the league. Even this cup game again has been away. There are few more formidable teams at home than Linfield, and when you don't have that safe place to get results, to really oil the wheels, maybe that's why you're seeing the stuttering. A lot's been made about McDade. I feel like it's been talked about. If you're going to be the top Linfield striker, you are going to be talked about a lot. In my view, last season they struggled for goals sometimes, particularly against the smaller teams. As you said there, they're taking care of business at the lower end of the league. It's the teams in the top 6 they are finding it tough against. All eyes are on Friday. It's hard to talk about this game on Saturday without talking about the game against Glentoran. But against Coleraine, it's still a team that's there to be beaten. It's a game where they want to put space between them and Coleraine. Coleraine aren't out of going on a big run themselves. And even just looking at the highlights, was there even a shot on target for Linfield? Every time Linfield plays anybody, teams are setting up deep. They're putting in a high block, lots of men at the back. And I'm not saying Coleraine parked the bus. They threw men forward as well, and they're very exciting. And by the chances, it seemed they had the better of a small smattering. But if you're a Linfield fan and you're talking to other Linfield fans and someone's saying we need to change personnel or we need to shift formation, is that all a bit premature, or is it now all about Friday? And if it works out, great. keep with the way things are going, or is it after Friday we know if changes seriously need to be made?
In terms of the away record, and they have been very unfortunate with the schedule because they've played 10 games on the road, which is ridiculous, really, when you think about it. But this is Linfield Football Club we're talking about. You have to win home and away. It doesn't matter if you're playing at Windsor Park. It doesn't matter if you're playing anywhere in Northern Ireland. They're expected to win. That's the demands of the football club. Against Coleraine, it was a drab affair, and that's been one disappointment for the Irish League season so far. When any of the big guns have gone against each other, the matches haven't lived up to expectation. Frankly, they've been boring. Hopefully that will change on Friday night whenever Larne play Cliftonville and Linfield play Glentoran. In terms of Robbie McDaid, he's obviously going to be talked about because he's one of the biggest names in Irish League football. He transferred from Glentoran, and whenever someone goes from one side of the big two to the other, it's headline news. What I would say is Robbie McDaid is a class act. His game, although he wants to score goals all the time, it's more than just about goals for him. He runs the channels, he works incredibly hard for the team, and I would be surprised if he's not a success for Linfield going forward. And I think his link up with Joel Cooper could really be a vital ingredient to any success that Linfield have. I'm a massive admirer of Cooper. I think he's one of the best players in the league when he's absolutely 100% on it. You could argue he is the top performer in Irish League football. So if those two can click, you'll soon see Linfield scoring goals, not just against the lower ranked teams, but against all the big boys as well. So listen, although I've been really disappointed with Linfield and I think they've made a really sleepy start, it won't take too much to wake them up. I would say, though, that if they lose against Glentoran, the fans will be going nuts because you can't afford to lose that game, even if you've won 5 league titles and 6. Linfield or Glentoran fans will hate to be on the wrong end of a result there. Glentoran are going to go into it as confident as can be because they've made a phenomenal start to the season. You made the point that they're not conceding goals. I think they've only conceded 1 goal in 7 games.
Incredible.
So the defence is absolutely playing brilliantly. It's back fives that win titles. That's what the great Roy Coyle used to say. Glentoran are cock a hoop at the moment. They will take a big crowd to Windsor Park as always. And I'm hoping that that match is an absolute cracker with goals galore. Don't be surprised if there's a red card or 2, Peter. And I just hope it shows up the Irish League at its best because, as I said, when the big guns have gone toe-to-toe so far in the league this season, it has been turn off TV.
Q 0-0. You took the words right out of my mouth on numerous points. Absolutely, Joel Cooper is a smashing player, really fantastic player out on wide. Only player who can really rival his talent and ability to influence the game is McMenamin. And you're right, there has been lots of really boring games. You know, the 3 most boring games right now probably is that Coleraine Linfield game. It's probably the Glentoran Larne game. And the Cliftonville Crusaders game on Friday night's probably a contender as well. North Belfast Derby. Sometimes it can be cantankerous and feisty. This one was more tetchy and slow-paced. The main highlights were a long shot from McDonough for Cliftonville. Was it a penalty for Ebe? And then there was that for Scythe. Header for Crusaders. He rose high. The header went straight onto the post and out. It feels as though any other game, Crusaders are scoring that. Of the two, do you feel anybody should feel unlucky not to sneak 3 points from that game?
No, let's call it straight. They're far better than what they showed that night, Peter. Cliftonville nearly won the title last season. They won the League Cup. They're one of the most exhilarating teams to watch in the Irish League. I love what Paddy McLaughlin has done there. I've christened his football Paddy Ball. And it's brilliant to watch. He's brought in real talent as well. But they've been patchy this season. And I know Paddy McLaughlin will desire improvements going forward. As for Crusaders, they've had some good nights and they've had some bad nights. So inconsistency has been their problem. I reckon they were probably happy enough coming away from Solitude with a point in that 0-0 game last weekend. They'll certainly be looking for better this weekend. Crusaders are at home to Glenavon, and as we said, Cliftonville are away to Larne on Friday night. The fact that Cliftonville are out of the County Antrim Shield and penalties, they'll be obviously disappointed at that, but the County Antrim Shield to Cliftonville isn't a major priority. They want to be challenging for the league title, and they want to be retaining the League Cup, and they finally want to get that monkey off their back with the Irish Cup. 1979 is a long time ago. You weren't even born, and that was the last time the Reds won the cup. I have a sneaking suspicion if they get the luck of the draw, they could go all the way this time. But in terms of the league, they'll want serious improvements in the weeks and months ahead.
That result was coming for Cliftonville in the sense that they've had brilliant results on paper with numerous wins in the row since that awful opening day defeat to Coleraine. But the performance wasn't always as impressive as that streak of wins were coming. You come against a top 6 team like Crusaders, and if you're not up to your best and on it, you're not going to get a result. Probably more disappointing for Cliftonville than Crusaders. Crusaders are unfortunately just mellowing out into the middle, and as the season goes on, I'm sure that will really frustrate Baxter as we progress and they're kind of stuck in a quagmire one way or the other. They will want to have had a few more results than they've had ultimately. And again, the one team who's sitting back and rubbing their palms with joy is Glentoran. I thought they were going to have a great season. Out of everybody, I just had an inkling that was all going to come together, and I did tip them to win the league, but I did not see this type of Glentoran coming back. A Glentoran that I don't think we've seen in this league for the guts of 15 years. A team that is not scared to put the foot to the pedal and just wipe teams away. They're really fluent up top. They're scoring goals from everywhere on the pitch. Everybody's chipping in to score goals. And a prime example for that was on Friday. The steamrolling continued there at home. 5-0 for Glentoran. It was like 3, I think, was it 3 or 4 by half time? Fantasy managers like I were thinking, yes, come on, more from McMenamin. I need a few more goals here. And on the other side of that, the Carrick buzz is starting to whimper slightly, but let's stick with Glentoran, a team who I think has had more individual goal scorers than any other team. They're coming from defence. Wilson's this star signing. McMenamin from that Crusaders game can't be stopped. Plum is putting these brilliant balls in. They look scary right now. Even after tonight, 4 goals past ours with their second string.
Yeah.
This is a Glentoran team we haven't seen in a long time. It's all coming together.
Well, it is. And I've been really impressed by what Glentoran have done this season. You mentioned Conor McMenamin there. What a player he is. I love watching McMenamin. He's direct. He's pacey. He can score goals. So delighted that he was called into the Northern Ireland squad. And I was at all the matches in June in the Nations League, and he was one of the bright lights of what was a nightmare period for Northern Ireland. You know, whenever he plays international football, he's going to come back into the Irish League full of confidence. And he, for me, was going to be a player of the season contender this time around. He's got so much going on. He's just a joy to watch. You're right about what you say in terms of other players scoring goals, because last season it was left at Jay Donnelly to hit the net on a consistent basis, but other players have joined that particular party now. That's brilliant for Glentoran. The other thing I would say about Glentoran is it's been very low-key at Glentoran. Last season, you'll remember, of course, there always seemed to be one controversy after another at the Oval. But this season, they've been going quietly about their business. And I think that's the correct strategy for the Glens. And I hope that for their sake, they continue that strategy. Because once off-the-pitch stuff happens at that club, on the pitch results suffer. That was proven last season. And if they can keep that low key, just getting on with it, no messing about and picking up the results, they are serious title contenders. I believed, Peter, they should have won the title last season. It all went wrong in the last few months of the campaign. It was just a nightmare for Glentoran, because at the end of it, it was an embarrassment on and off the pitch what was happening at that football club. But they have looked at things at the summer, clearly. I think they made some really clever purchases in the summer. Wilson has hit the ground running like no man's business. And Glentoran definitely could win the title again this time around. But I stress, off the pitch issues cannot come in and make on the pitch results go down the Swanee. And that is the bottom line. The talent is there on the football pitch. They've got a mean defence who aren't conceding any goals. Midfield is scoring goals and creating goals. And up front, Donnelly is a huge threat. And McMenamin, as I've spoken about, is one of my favourite players to watch in Irish League football. So, yeah, Glentoran are looking like the real deal. I think the big thing for them will be what happens whenever they lose a match, because that will be the test. For instance, if they were to go to Windsor Park and lose on Friday night, how will they react to that? Because champions react well to setbacks, and Glentoran have to prove that they are a champion force this season. But for now, everyone connected to Glentoran and their fans can be really, really satisfied with the start of the season. They can look forward with relish to the match at Windsor on Friday night.
They've been surprisingly boring. You highlight all that drama again from last season, and reflecting upon that, even I am once again surprised that they have been able to recover from that so far and been able to create such a clean slate. They have scored 12 goals unanswered in the league. They have won 6 in a row. And you hit a point that I somewhat pointed to last week and it didn't come to fruition. What does happen when they concede? What does happen when they go a goal down? They conceded first to Crusaders, got a goal back quite quickly, and it was game on from there. What happens if Linfield score early or one of these other teams score early or even at all? Because so far Glentoran's games have really been about throwing men forward, exploiting that fear factor about them. I think they were strong against Coleraine. They held up well there, but everything does lead up to that game on Friday and they'll be feeling it. And if it doesn't go their way, do they falter? That, you're absolutely right. Where their season goes all pins on that game and how they react, win, lose or draw. Carrick have been on a good run. The other side of that team, another thumping. In fact, they got thumped again. That's 3 in a row where they've conceded at least 4 goals. It was 6 against Cliftonville last week in the League Cup, 5 against Glentoran. They've conceded 4, and they had a fairly strong team. 4 against Dundela this evening in the County Random Shield. I always knew their back line was not absolutely top tier. It wasn't one of the top end and was slightly aging. But it's all falling apart a bit now.
It is, but you know what, Peter? I'm going to call this now. Carrick have 13 points from 9 games. I'm looking at the table here. You've got Dungannon on 3 and Portadown on 1. Even at this stage, I'm saying that Carrick won't get relegated. And with the best will in the world, if you're being totally honest about it, given the size of the club Carrick are, and I know Stuart King will want much more than this, but if they can avoid relegation and stay out of those bottom 2 places, I think that's a pretty good season. And the start that they have made is going to give them the basis to make sure that they do stay in the top flight. The defeat against Dundela here tonight in the County Antrim Shield, that one's going to hurt, because you can go to Glentoran, you can go to Cliftonville, get hammered if they have a good night. They're just quality sides. But Dundela losing to a championship side on their home turf 4-1, that's slightly embarrassing, I've got to say. And Niall Curry coming back.
Former Flame Niall Curry as well.
Yeah, Niall Curry coming back to Carrick. He will certainly have enjoyed that. If I was picking out a manager of the season and across both leagues, it would be Niall Curry. And the job that he has done at Dundela is nothing short of extraordinary. If you remember last season, Peter, he came in there and Dundela were down in the dumps and heading towards oblivion. He just delivered with his personality, with his football acumen and his incredibly shrewd tactics, got them going again. And now they're flying high in the championship, which is a brilliant league as well, by the way. You've got Loughgall, Anna United, Dundela and Warren Point all going for the promotion there. But yeah, we should pay tribute to Dundela for that win tonight, and they're now in the semi-finals. But I think Carrick, they've got Dungannon on Saturday, and I would fully expect a reaction from Stuart King's side.
Well, a reaction is also probably needed from Dean Shields' men. 5-0 themselves. They were the losers against Glenavon at Mourneview Park. Declan Dunn, their goalkeeper, was poor for the first goal as he tried to up and catch it. Ball fell down in the 6-yard box. Glenavon swing it in. Same thing for the fourth. 5-0 doesn't look good for anybody, but looking back on the goals, that first one could have been avoided. The second one was good play. The third goal from Isaac Bird, I'm sure many people have seen it on highlights. You just don't stop those, as they say. Really fantastic strike with the left boot from outside the box. At that point, you're 4-0 down after another poor bit of goalkeeping play. 5-0, sure the game is over anyway. Strange team at the minute, Dungannon, because they look far better than the results are saying on paper. I think Keelan Marin is a really strong player on the ball. Perhaps is without it, he's getting caught out in a team that has slight weak points. They have exciting, nippy players up top. It's probably lacking a bit of experience, a backbone to really lead this team is what's letting them down, I'd say. And it's a big game against Carrick. If Carrick win that, I agree to a certain point that Carrick are looking fairly good with plenty of games to go. Dungannon should have more points than they do, but every game they've not helped themselves at all.
No, and again, you look at the table and they have conceded, they've one win from 9 games and they've conceded 24 goals in those 9. That ain't going to get you many points, Peter, is it? And that defeat against Glenavon, that was a crushing blow because Glenavon came into that match under a lot of pressure. They were on a ropey run, and then Glenavon players probably couldn't believe their luck. Credit to Bird, by the way. He's another talented young player that Glenavon have at their disposal, and he produced probably the moment of the weekend. Fantastic strike. And that was a big result for Gary Hamilton. I think he needed that as much as the players needed it. But in terms of Dungannon, they're going to have to start producing better performances and better results. Otherwise, it's just going to be them and Portadown who'll be cut adrift at the bottom. And then it becomes a complete and utter dogfight. And that is not what Dean Shields wanted. Dean Shields obviously is a manager who wants to play football on the deck. But what I would suggest is sometimes philosophies have to go out the window to get points. And in the Irish League, even the likes of the big teams will play a long ball now and again. I like Dean Shields. I've known Dean for a long time. And he's got a great attitude about football, but these will be worrying times for him as Dungannon manager because he'll have been expecting a whole lot more, Peter. Carrick against Dungannon, that's a crucial game for the Tyrone team and for the manager.
Significant investment. I do think that adds pressure. You've got plenty of players in from Glentoran and results need to come, and they're probably only thing that's helping them right now is how poor Portadown is, and they had a chance to drag down, even though it's early, Glenavon into this mix, and Glenavon just swatted them away and said we're not getting into that sandpit of relegation talk at all. They've had a up and down season. I don't know how much you can analyse that game. 5-0, you don't know where they're going to go next, but Glenavon want a bit of momentum. There's 5-0. I'm sure Gary Hamilton is pointing to the board going, and we go again. Please do not mess it up like they did after that Coleraine result.
Peter, let me tell you, Glenavon won't get relegated. Not a chance. Listen, Gary Hamilton, he hasn't had the best run over the past few years, and there's been some really shocking results and some embarrassing defeats in cup competitions. But he's too good a manager with that group of players, and they won't go down. So that's Carrick and Glenavon staying up, I can guarantee that. The other 4, who knows?
You're right, and a team that many people said would be down near the bottom had a somewhat bright start to the league, but that little firecracker that was Newry set early doors has started to fizzle away, and as it limply descends to earth, the hope will be for the Mourne men that I can fall into some dry bushes and ignite their season once again. They've had great results, and you know what? They've had some good performances without any points at the end of the day. And on Friday, they came up against Larne at home. And so far this season, there's one thing you know you're going to get from Larne. It's probably going to be boring efficiency, and they'll get away with some points no matter what. They're top of the table right now. That's mainly due to a lot of teams, the likes of Glentoran and Linfield, being a few games behind. But they're still up there. They're still undefeated, and they were able to push what could have been a very tricky side in Newry. They were able to push them to the side. They come out 2-0 winners, and it's just them exploiting the weaknesses. It's like they sit there and they focus and they ping the ball about and they try and find an opening, and eventually they get it. And on this game, they got it from that left-hand side. A real weakness of Newry seems to be their wing-backs this season, and they were able to exploit it on Newry's left, their right. A really nice ball in from the right-hand side to get the first goal that came into the box. The second goal for Larne came from the other side. Frod Soule firing the ball in, but it was that left back. It was caught out again. Mark Randall coming in, free as a bird, to score the second header. Larne are proving to be a very efficient but unflashy team. I'm sure Tiernan Lynch will take that every day of the week.
Well, I'll tell you this. We talked there about Dean Shields and Dean having his philosophy. For me, this season, Tiernan Lynch has already proved that he's a lot more pragmatic than he has been in his managerial career so far. It doesn't always have to be fancy football to get the result. And what Larne have done is exactly what Glentoran have done. And you must give credit to Tiernan Lynch and Mick McDermott for this. First and foremost, they've made their teams hard to beat because they're not conceding goals. Glentoran have conceded 1 goal, I believe, as I said earlier on. Larne have conceded 2, having played an extra match. And that is outstanding. It really is from a defensive point of view. And both managers and both coaching sets of staff deserve credit for that. And I've criticised Lynch and McDermott in the past. I certainly criticised them last season. I know that went down like a lead balloon with both of them, but that's my job, guys. And I will continue to criticise and praise whenever I see fit. But Larne, yeah, I've been slightly surprised by them, Peter, I've got to be honest, because they lost a few, what I would class as really top-class Irish League players. And you see them top of the table at this point in time. And the players deserve immense credit for that. I think Frod Soule has been excellent in the middle of the park. And as I said, defensively, they've been ship-shape. So we'll see how far it goes, undefeated. And again, a massive match for them on Friday against Cliftonville. And that will tell a tale. In terms of Newry, the Newry fans are probably my favourite fans in the Irish League because they come with their flags, they come with original songs, and they back the team, win, lose or draw. And I've been fortunate enough to cover Newry games in the past few years. It is actually a really, really enjoyable experience, and the fans make it that way. I think in Darren Mullen, they've got a shrewd cookie of a manager, and overall during the season, I think home form will be the key factor for them. And this weekend, they have got a monumental match because they play Portadown at Shamrock Park. I think this weekend's fixtures are the best batch of fixtures we've had all campaign because you've got so many big games at the top. And we haven't even mentioned Ballymena against Coleraine yet, which is obviously a phenomenal derby. So yeah, that Portadown Newry match is going to be tasty and then some.
That is a big game. The team they're up against is a team who, a bit like Dungannon, had their chance to drag a team who's had a poor start to the season down into this early season fight at the bottom of the league. And similar to Dungannon, Portadown were not able to drag That team I'm talking about is Ballymena. They were away at the showgrounds, Portadown, a place where they've not had any result that wasn't a loss since 2016. I saw a game that was really important. Paul Doolan talked a lot about in the early days of the season about how they were facing a lot of these top 6 teams. They faced all of the top 6 in the first 6 fixtures, and now they've played 3 other games, and from those 3 games they've only got the 1 point, and that's due in part because they lost to Ballymena at the showgrounds. They lost 2-0, and both goals, I think it's more than fair to say, I think it's clear as day, really poor goals to give away. 2 goals that were, unfortunately, as much as he was brilliant last season, were clearly at fault due to Jethro Barr. First goal was from a free kick that was thrown in. He went up to punch it. He didn't really connect with it. It drops to Ballymena. They fired in. Portadown push on, try to get an equaliser. Ballymena were not good in this game either, let's be clear. But as they tried to somewhat meagerly push on and try and get a goal, Jethro Barr punts the ball towards the other half. It barely reaches the centre circle where there's a Ballymena midfielder right there to pick it up. He slinks it on to David McDade, where he runs on and scores his second goal. Game, set, match. I wouldn't say the pressure is off David Jeffrey, because that was a no-win game. If they didn't win it, he was in trouble. He wins it, so what? Doesn't really matter, as they are sitting here with a 1-0 loss in the Continental Shield to Larne, so pressure's still on there. At least they've got 3 more points away from Portadown. Starting with Ballymena, what is it about this season that really has proved to be so disappointing? Is it the fact that they've not been able to recover from that awful result now, that draw against Glenavon when they had them and they only had 9 men? Or is it the simple fact that they haven't been able to gel and they're lacking the incredible talents that are Winchester and Miller?
We talked about Linfield and their European hangover. I would say that Ballymena United have been suffering from an Irish Cup hangover. You'll remember they lost it in devastating circumstances to Crusaders last season in the final. But I think they're starting to come to the boil, and Davy McDade scoring 2 goals against Portadown at the weekend was very, very significant, because when he starts scoring, he doesn't tend to stop for a while. And I've decided in the last 60 seconds, Peter, that Ballymena won't go down either. With David Jeffrey at the helm, there's no chance of that. And it was really interesting for me that Jeffrey handed in his resignation earlier this season to the board at Ballymena. For their sakes, I was pleased that the board didn't accept it and the players rallied round, because let's face it, Ballymena United aren't going to get a better manager than David Jeffrey. Jeffrey has been there, seen it, done it, won it countless times. I'm certain that he is still the man for the job, and them beating Portadown last weekend was a big result for the football club, and they'll look to kick on now. They've got Coleraine at the weekend coming up. That's always a brilliant derby. Everyone goes on about Linfield, Glentoran, Glenavon, Portadown, and Crusaders, Cliftonville. I'm telling you now, you see Ballymena, Coleraine, if you ever get a chance to go to see one, that's got a real edge to it, and then some. And there's always a real feisty, fiery atmosphere amongst the fans. So that'll be a really interesting game. But yeah, Ballymena will be safe enough. They're not going to get in the top 6, so they'll be looking for 7th. Portadown, for me, if Portadown finish 11th, they'll be doing well. They've made a shocking start to the season. 9 games, 1 point. That's horrendous. And they couldn't score furniture right now. The goal scoring threat is minimum. They've lost some, obviously, quality strikers over the past period. Lee Bonus went to Larne. Adam Sally is no longer at Portadown, which is a mystery to me. They've got to start going. Otherwise, like I've said, it's going to be Dungannon and Portadown are going to be cut adrift at the bottom. But on the upside for Portadown fans, they will fancy a home match against Newry. There's a bit of rivalry between those clubs that dates back a few years, and the Portadown players I fancy will be up for that, and they're going to have to be, because Newry are going to bring it, and that's going to be a really fascinating match on Saturday as well.
They're going to have to show something on the Ballymena, not being dragged in And you talked about the fire that's in between that Coleraine and Ballymena rivalry. Well, they need to show something, because at the minute, the middle of the park for Ballymena just seems completely paper thin. He was playing 4 players up top, almost like this 4-2-4 at times for David Jeffrey. And I'm not saying he's under threat, but massive improvements absolutely need to be made. That was not a great Portadown side, and they tripped their way to a result there, and something needs to change. And maybe it's confidence is what they need. David McDade is clearly their best player, and perhaps that's a team that's lacking experience in some key positions. Like Ross Redmond's brilliant for the set pieces. He gives you something, and the likes of Jordan Gibson there and Connor Keeley, they're big men, and I think you're right, they'll probably avoid 11th because of their threat from set plays, but I think they've got a lot to show to me that they're going to have anything that they are going able to hold off Dungannon Swifts. On Portadown, not only I almost said at the start of the season that Portadown have the chance to start alphabetically at the bottom and never leave it, and of course that didn't happen because of just they played on Sunday, so that technically has not happened. But I think we are looking down the barrel, if you're a Portadown fan, at potentially an historically bad team in this league. And I mean from a points total, pure numbers, this could be an historically bad team, because they're sitting there with 1 point from 9 games, and they have only scored 3 goals all season in 9 games. Only 2 of them have been open play, one of them's a penalty. They missed a penalty against Glenavon. They can't get out of their own way. They talk about the fact that they don't have anybody to put in the back of the net. I've seen Doolan say that numerous times. But Adam Sally scored a hat-trick at the weekend, regardless of what happened there. You're still in charge of the club, and you've got to try and make something happen. They looked like they didn't know what to do with the ball when they had it moving forward against Ballymena, and when you can't do anything up top and you keep making really poor mistakes at the back, nothing highlights that more than that Dungannon game in the cup where they conceded with the last kick of the ball and then conceded with almost the first kick of extra time. Paul Doolan's had 24 league games in charge since he came in, charged the team at the end of January this year. He's had 3 wins, 4 draws and 17 losses. That's a 12.5% win rate. They haven't won a game since March, and they don't even get draws either. They're losing 70% of their games. Yes, they've had a tough start to the season, but in the 3 games where they had the chance to play against teams that weren't in the top 6, they have either not turned up by conceding within the first minute against Dungannon, or they miss a penalty against Glenavon and aren't able to win when Glenavon are playing well. And they had a chance against Ballymena, and they, again, I keep saying shooting themselves in the foot, but that's it. They have 1 point right now. They are also bottom of the table when it comes to the amount of set piece goal difference. They keep conceding from set pieces. Clearly that's something that needs to change. They've conceded 8 goals. They've only scored 1 from a set piece, and that was a penalty, and they missed a penalty. Here's the pointer I have. 17 points. That was the total that Dungannon Swifts had in the 2020-2021 season. That is the lowest ever total in a 12-team league. I know it was a weird year. Let's put Lisburn Distillery as a real full-team league where no drama happened. 19 points. For Portadown to even get 19 points, they would have to massively improve and start beating teams around them. They have been able to beat Dungannon of the past 2 seasons. Ballymena clearly has the run around them. The only reason they survived last season is because they were able to beat Warrenpoint 3 times. And I do not think Warrenpoint were a worse team than Portadown. Something needs to change. They're not going to be able to do anything personnel-wise until January. And they now go into a game against Newry City, who have 5 points on them. It's a late game. And if they lose that game, how can anybody say Portadown still have a strong chance of survival? I know it's early days, but they cannot help. Who are they going to beat? Because no one's beating the top 6 sides. So are they suddenly going to turn it around? Even if they were to start beating Ballymena and Glenavon, they're almost leaving it way too late to do this. They could honestly be the worst team this league has ever seen.
You have done a lot of research on Portadown, Peter. I've got to hand it to you. Listen, I tipped them to go down at the start of the season. I'm not going to change that, but let's not call them the worst team in Premiership history just yet. We're only 9 games in. Let's see how they go.
Yes, just yet, but even last season, they had 5 points and 1 point had 3. Relegation would be disaster for this club at this stage.
Oh, yeah. Well, listen, on that point, when I look at the table and I think to myself, what constitutes a success for each one of these 12 teams? Let's run through them quickly. So this is what constitutes success for every one of these Irish League sides. Portadown, staying up. Dungannon, top 10. Newry, staying up. Ballymena, 7th in a cup run. Glenavon, 7th in a cup run. Carrick, top 9, top 10 and a cup run. Linfield have to win the title. Coleraine have to get into Europe. Crusaders have to get into Europe. Cliftonville have to get into Europe and win a cup. Glentoran have to win the title. Larne have to get into Europe. That's what constitutes a success for those teams. And, you talk about Portadown. If they avoid relegation, this will be a good season for them.
11th seems like a big dream at the minute for Portadown. I'm not wishing anything against them at all, but it really does. I think it's underreported how poorly it's been for them, and a lot is going to have to change. And on this little final point, nobody's been able to do anything with this Portadown side since Ronnie McFall. From McGibbon to Tipton to Niall Curry. Niall Curry has done almost brilliant things at every club he's been at, bar Portadown. What is going on? There's all this weird talk about the transfers come in. They had a bizarre transfer window where was it 19 left and 15 came in. I'm starting to wonder after seeing that game of the weekend. We can all say it's early, but at some point you have to see the writing on the wall and going, how is this going to improve? Let's talk about something else that's not the league. Let's jump into news. I've been reading lots about what you've been saying about the Northern Ireland national team, Stephen. Let's talk about the draw first. Last week, I somewhat put down on paper on who would be the absolute dream teams to have. And I must say, Finland was definitely at the top of the list in the second pot. They have Denmark, Finland, Slovenia, Kazakhstan, and really doesn't matter who you get from pot 6. It's San Marino. It's hard to say that is not the absolute dream group.
We got the luck of the draw, didn't we? The Irish FA contingent, which included Ian Barclough, who went out to Frankfurt for the draw. What they should have been doing after that is going into a shop and buying a lottery ticket, because they'd have probably won millions on the back of it, because boy, did the fortune favour Northern Ireland. And maybe it's a bit of luck that we're going to need, because for the year of 2022, it's been an absolute nightmare. I have been to all of those Nations League games. I might be one of the few reporters who actually did that, going to all 6, and we only won 1, and the other 5, frankly, the performances were dire. Embarrassing on occasions, certainly the 2 against Cyprus, which I thought just took us to a new low under the manager Ian Barclough. But this draw, we're in Group H, and that should be Group H for hope, because there's no doubt in my mind with these players and with the correct manager, these players could do something in this group. The Northern Ireland team is a lot better than results have suggested in 2022. Make no mistake about that. I know players, a lot of people will say, we don't have the players. Believe me, there's some talent in that group. They just have to be coached effectively and correctly, and then the proper tactics have to be used, and there has to be a real togetherness between the players, the fans and the manager, and that is not the case at this moment in time. Denmark are going to win that group, Peter.
Yeah,
they're a class act. But second place takes you to Germany, by the way, 2024. So Finland, Slovenia and Kazakhstan and Northern Ireland are going to be fighting it out for that second place. You're right, San Marino are going to be the whipping boys of that group. But if Northern Ireland can put some really good home results together and show some fight character and tactical awareness away from home, they're going to be in the mix, believe me. And we could see a turnaround in fortunes. But the big question is, what manager will be leading the team in 2023? Listen, I've made my feelings clear.
You
I made
have.
them clear in June.
Say.
I like Ian Barclough as a person. He's a very, very decent man. I have a lot of time for him. He's a gentleman. But it's not happening for him as the Northern Ireland manager. It seems to me that the players, certainly the senior players, don't believe in his management. And that's a real problem. Because, as I've said before, the only time whenever Northern Ireland are truly successful is when everyone is in it together and believing in the one cause. And obviously Michael O'Neill was brilliant at doing that and brought the team to Euro 2016. But when I think back to the Nations League games, we lacked belief, a plan, and we lacked an identity. And that is really worrying going ahead. At this point in time, the Irish FA have said they support Ian Barclough. Although after I did that story in the Sunday Life, I was informed that some members of the Irish FA board were a little concerned, to say the least, about the criticism that backing received from, that Barclough had received that backing from the IFA. And I do believe there are some Irish FA board members who would not be against relieving Ian of his duties, but the key figures are the chief executive, Patrick Nelson, the president, Conrad Kirkwood, and the chairman, Stephen Martin. Ultimately, they will take some convincing to ditch Barclough and move for someone else. But what I would say is the Euro qualifying does not start until March. So there's plenty of time for them to make a change and to bring in a successor. I would imagine that the fans would back that successor, and that might give us the togetherness that we need to have a real go at qualifying for Euro 2024. And I must say this, I've spent time in Germany at tournaments. I was lucky enough to cover the 2006 World Cup, and Germany is one of the greatest football nations on the planet, and they will host an absolutely phenomenal tournament. I believe it'll even be better than France Euro 2016, and it would be amazing if thousands upon thousands of people representing the Green and White Army were out in Germany, because the Germans would love them, and it would add so much colour and so much gloss to what I think is going to be a fantastic tournament. So everyone knows what I think, but ultimately it's up to the Irish FA to make that decision on Ian Barclough. But trust me, the players are there to have a real go at this group if everyone is together. And I repeat, that means manager, players and supporters.
There's a shared love, I think, between the Germans and the Irish for a little golden elixir. Oh, you're just tantalizing. I think I had already accepted that any sort of qualification dreams was over, and then they presented this group on a platter. And this is the third podcast in a row where we're talking about Barclough's future, and nobody's coming out to really back him at this point. And I was aware of your feelings beforehand, and I didn't really get into that story last week that you just really clearly got into in regards to the split within the IFA. And it's hard not to say that seeing that group, I was already saying, right, okay, we're going to go for Barclough and we're going to get France and Spain and we're going to get the Republic of Ireland group, which was ridiculously hard, and we're going to fight it out and we're going to go on. But because the group is there to be taken, and because even the fixtures, you've got San Marino to start away, you get a win away, you can take on Finland at home, whatever happens against Denmark away, and then you've got that run of Kazakhstan at home. What can you do against Slovenia? And you don't have to go against Denmark until the final game in the group, and Denmark could be sitting there home and hosed, and you could be getting, we can snap them at home. It's like it's set up there to do it. It feels to me that group hopefully will convince the Davises, the Evans of this world to go, we've got to give it one more go. Hopefully that gives them. You're clearly alluding to the fact that some senior players don't believe it is Barclough. Another topic that I have been bringing up in this podcast a few times, but I may as well ask someone in your position that has such experience and knowledge of the game. If I was to pitch it to you, who's at the top of your headhunting list? Who's your realistic target that you would like to be sitting there come March, come this game against San Marino away on the 23rd of March? Who would be your ideal candidate?
It's a great question. It depends who's available first and foremost. But if the IFA decided to dispense with Ian's services, and there's no guarantee of that, I would certainly be making a phone call to Michael O'Neill. Michael is without a job at the moment.
He said it.
Michael is without a job at the moment. He was at Stoke City and he lost his job earlier in the season. Now, what I do know is Michael would probably prefer to go back into club football, but there's no harm in asking if there is a position available. He is a phenomenal manager. He is very, very shrewd in terms of what Northern Ireland players need and want. And tactically, he has shown that he is brilliant at international football. So if you're asking me for a dream ticket, and when I look at that draw, I believe if Michael O'Neill was in charge of the group of players that we have now, Northern Ireland can finish second in that group. What I would add is Johnny Evans will stay on. I was over in Greece and spoke to him before and after he won his 100th cap, and congratulations to Johnny. He has been a phenomenal player and a wonderful servant, and he is for continuing his international career. Stephen Davis, I spoke to Davo as well, and he has 140 caps in the bank, and he is now seriously considering his international future. And I'm with you, Peter. I would love to see Stephen continue. For me, the three most influential players that Northern Ireland have got remain Davis, Johnny Evans and Stuart Dallas, who hopefully will be back next year after injury. So it would be brilliant if all three of those guys were playing against San Marino and Finland in March. But we shall wait and see. Having Stuart Dallas back is going to be huge. He is like five players in one of my favourite players ever to come out of the Irish League, and look at the career he has gone on to have. An absolute hero at Leeds United and a sensational player for them, and certainly one of the best players that Northern Ireland have had in the 21st century.
Put it out there, Stephen. It starts to feel right. It feels as though that setup of games just makes it even more tantalizing. Let's get the 2016 return tour. Let's get all the boys back again. Sure, Chris Brunt can stand on the sidelines and clap along like he did back then. Let's get all the boys back together. I love O'Neill. I still have a little star beside Neil Lennon. Controversial, yes, but just feels like the best available that isn't Michael O'Neill. But again, I've talked about that loads. Oh, again, I just want to say this.
On Neil Lennon, can I just say, Neil Lennon's a brilliant manager and a fantastic guy as well. I've known Neil for a long time, and how it ended with Northern Ireland was an absolute disgrace what happened to him. But he was very proud to play for Northern Ireland as a manager. He was hugely successful at Celtic on 2 occasions. He's doing brilliant work over in Cyprus at the moment. And of course, Ammonia almost got a result against Manchester United last week in Europe. And yeah, he's a far better manager than people give him credit for. Listen, there's other people out there as well. You know, I know Grant McCann, I know Michael Duff, 2 former Northern Ireland internationals. They're doing very, very well at Peterborough and Barnsley, respectively. I believe that they'd prefer to stay in club football at this moment in time. But, you know, you still maybe give them a call just to see the lay of the land. You know, there's Kieran McKenna at Ipswich, another guy from Northern Ireland. Ideally, I'd want someone from Northern Ireland to lead the team. Like the best Northern Ireland manager in club football right now is Brendan Rodgers. I know Brendan's under pressure at Leicester City, but listen, the guy's an absolutely sensational manager, and what he has achieved in the game is absolutely ridiculous. Another brilliant guy. So Northern Ireland have got good managers out there. Stephen Robinson at St Mirren is another one. He was interviewed for the Post the last time. Tommy Wright, not working at this moment in time, a brilliant manager for St Johnstone. Listen, Jim Magilton and Kenny Shields were also interviewed. There are good managers out there from Northern Ireland, and I hope the FA do decide they want a new manager, that they stick with someone from Northern Ireland. But yeah, Michael O'Neill would be my first choice.
It seems over the top to say once in a lifetime, but it feels like the way it's fallen with such generational talents in the eyes of Northern Ireland, historically brilliant Northern Ireland players. You just look at that 18 months from March to November next year and think, what a chance, what an opportunity, just a real final last roll of the dice. And I'm trying to pretend that Michael O'Neill would look at that and go, I do it for 18 months and all of a sudden I get them in there and all of a sudden I'm back up the top of every championship or even lower Premier League little list of managers that could get it. But look, I'll hit pause on that. Again, at least we warned, at least we're not in the likes of the Republic of Ireland group, Netherlands and France and Greece. I cannot believe I'm telling you that Northern Ireland have a better chance to go in the Euros than the Republic of Ireland, but somehow they do. And if you want,
it's a fair point.
And if if you are set to go to all those games, Stephen, I think your bus to Kazakhstan in June is about to leave in the next 2 hours. So all the best and enjoy that.
I've got to be honest, over the course of travelling to all these places, I've forgotten most of the countries I've been to. But I don't think I've been to Kazakhstan, either reporting or otherwise. So that might be a treat.
I just want to see you in a big Borat one bikini, and that will, make nightmares or dreams. We've talked about what an incredible slate of games that are set to take place this weekend, and let's hope they deliver. But the task that is ahead of myself and Mr. Beacom is, well, we've got to put forward some suggestions on how they're going to finish. And we'll start on Friday night, as we always do, because there is constantly a Friday night game now. It's the big game. Larne against Cliftonville, what way are you going? We'll start with that just because it's on that. We'll build up to the big game.
Well, what I would say is every single one of these matches at the weekend, they're hard to call. But I'll call them because that's kind of what I do. And people can say, Beacom, nothing about it. Or you can say, geez, he knows a wee bit about it. So Larne Cliftonville, I'm going to go there. 2-1 win for Cliftonville and Hale scoring the winner.
Oh, wouldn't that just be very surprising? I think at home that's a 1-1 draw. Bit like I've seen with a few of these Larne games. Cliftonville could get the early goal and Larne will just choke them. They'll pass them through. They'll swarm around them. They'll keep a cool head. And I think it's going to be Paul O'Neill that's going to score the big goal to get it to be 1-1 there at Inver Park. Big game at the top of the table, and that would be a brilliant result for either one of these two teams. I refuse to call this the Big Two in 2022. We go to Windsor Park, live on BBC, Northern Ireland. Linfield finally get a few home comforts. They're going against their big rivals, Glentoran. Tell me this is not going to be a draw, Mr. Stephen Beacom, please.
I'm not one for draws. I'm going to predict none of these are going to end in draws. Linfield Glentoran, the biggest match in Northern Ireland, still is. It always is. It doesn't matter where Linfield and Glentoran are on the table. Right now, Glentoran are second, Linfield are sixth. Linfield's first home match in what seems like an eternity. Glentoran on a roll. I believe Glentoran are coming into this in a better place than Linfield. And I think it'll be the Glentoran fans who'll be cheering after it. I'm going to go for Glentoran to win that one 2-1. And McMenamin the star of the show.
What a result that would be. I do think McMenamin could really dominate early. I think it will look good early for Glentoran. I think they'll get the goal. I say it's 1-1. I think it's all going to look bad when Kirk Miller gets sent off. But David Healy's going to look to his bench as he always does. He's going to hit his watch and he's going to go, it's divine time. And just like that game that we were there for Warm Point against Linfield, he's going to be the man that's going to get a goal from a set piece with maybe 5-10 minutes to go. Windsor's going to go wild and Linfield's season will finally start. 2-1 Linfield. Hopefully an incredible game. Probably going to be a 0-0 all day long. We'll speed through these games on Saturday. The derby that you said is fiery and feisty. Who's going to pip the other when Ballymena hosts Coleraine?
Well, I've gone for 2 away wins for Cliftonville and Glentoran, so I'm going to switch it up here and go for a bit of a surprise result. Ballymena might just overcome Coleraine. I'm going to go 2-1 to David Jeffrey's men. Call it a hunch, Peter.
I am going to disagree just because of what I've seen from Ballymena. I think this is all about what Coleraine team turn up, and I think it's potentially as high as 4-0 Coleraine.
Wow.
After a big result, I just think that Ballymena are due potentially being at the other end of a poor result, and I don't think that Portadown result papers over any cracks. There's going to be cracks in this game, plenty at the back. Will it mean lots of goals? I don't know. We go to Carrick as they host Dungannon Swifts. A win for Carrick here would be amazing for their long-term safety in this league, even this early, and I know they always start off quite strong. Can Dungannon turn up and score the goals? I think not. I think it's a 0-0 potentially, despite how sketchy they are at the back.
Listen, mate, this is a 0-0. To quote Les Dennis and Family Fortunes, I'll give you the money myself. There's going to be goals in this. If there's not, I will be absolutely astonished. Carrick to win 3-2. It could be even more because both defences are incredibly dodgy at the minute. But I'll go 3-2 to Stuart King's side.
This feels like the typical busy Barry Flynn game on the radio for sure. Yeah, actually, I've said that I'm going to have to stick with it, but I don't know how Curtis Allen doesn't score at least 2 or 3. What a fantastic season he is having, proving all the doubters wrong. The most streakiest teams in the league meet at Seaview. This feels like 2 prime deers with roller skates on. I don't know what's going to happen here when Crusaders host Glenavon. Just like it could be any kind of result, and Glenavon haven't been scared to turn up against a big team, and Crusaders have shown that they'll bottle it against the lower team. So, do you fancy either one of them? I think it's probably going to be 2-1, but I mean, I'm literally going to flip a coin. Maybe I'll edge it to Crusaders because they're at home.
For whatever reason, Peter, I've watched a few Crusaders Glenavon games in my time, and it's always interesting watching Stephen Baxter and Gary Hamilton on the bench because I wouldn't say they're bosom buddies in any shape or form. I don't think I'm revealing any trade Irish League secrets there by saying that. But I'm gonna go Crusaders to win it 3-2. I think there's goals in this one again. You can see I don't go for 0-0.
No, exciting there. Again, Glenavon could be feeling it after that Dungannon game, but we'll just have to see. Seaview, I think, can maybe pip it there for Crusaders. Probably 2-1 there. And 5:30. If Portadown are feeling the pressure, they're not going to feel any more love and affection from their fans as there's an Oktoberfest event happening before the game. I'll not spell it out. That could be tough for Doolin if there isn't a result. I am going to predict a 3-1 win for Newry here. This could be really, really difficult and messy at Shamrock Park if Portadown don't get a result against Newry. There were boos on Saturday, and there'll be more than that if they're sitting there with 10 teams played and only 1 point to their name. Or are you the leader of are you a believer in a Portadown revolution?
I'm no believer in any Portadown revolution, but I've got to be honest, I felt a bit sorry for them whenever you were having a pop earlier on. So, you know what? They're going to win at some point this season, surely, and this might be just the game to do it. I still think they'll go down, but given everything that's happened to them this season, this is their 10th match. This is going to be their first win, despite the Newry fans who will raise a racket. I'm going to go Portadown 2, Newry 1, and that concludes the results from this particular jury.
Yeah, well, I would say to back up why I think Newry might have the beating of Portadown. Portadown have struggled against Dungannon twice, and the most similar team in the league in makeup of fast little players up top. feels like it's Newry, and with Portadown struggling at the back right now, you could just see an on-rushing James Teelan, a bit like that Larne game where, Larne had their chances, but they weren't able to convert them. I think they'll have plenty of chances to convert at Shamrock Park. Stephen, it's been an absolute delight to have you on the podcast. I usually say this is the time where people say, where can people find out the things you think and the stuff you say? But clearly, it's either online at the Belfast Telegraph. I feel like I accidentally read your stuff all the time. That's the place to find your stuff, correct?
Yes, and really thank you for inviting me on, Peter. It's been an absolute pleasure, and best of luck going forward with the podcast. And to everyone who listens, enjoy your football this week. As I've said before, this is the best weekend of football the Irish League has had all season, and let's hope we get loads of goals, loads of entertainment and loads of drama.
Fingers crossed. Steve, let's do this again. Cheers. And that is that. Thank you so much for listening. I know it's been like a really weird couple of weeks. All going well. You have a few you have not listened to yet, podcast wise, but thanks for sticking it out. I know once again this is not out on a Tuesday. It's just been really weird schedule wise, and I'm trying to get these people when I can. So I apologize for that, but I do aim to get this to you every Tuesday, hopefully with the weird schedule. Perhaps there's a few podcasts you want to listen to, and if you do want to listen to, of course you can listen to however you want. You can maybe switch it up, you can listen to Spotify one week, you can jump on to your little smart device and say, hey smart device, please play Kicking Match, an Irish League podcast, and it will work. And of course you can follow me on social media. It's at Kicking Match online on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all those fun things. I'll see you next week with even more crack, some big games. Follow me for the bands. See you soon. T to the U to the L's. Bye.